There's chaos in crypto markets, in markets more broadly, but especially in the crypto markets. Just how low are we going to go here? Where's the bottom?
Well, it's hard to know. It's impossible to know. But we are seeing real-world consequences. We're seeing real job loss affecting real people. We're seeing real people losing real money. And that's in the context, of course, of record high inflation, erosion of purchasing power for families. So all in all, it's not a great picture. That being said, as you noted, we're hardly immune. It's hardly just the crypto market being affected here. It's really a much broader global economy meltdown that we're seeing.
So when you see Coinbase, first a hiring freeze, now slashing 18% of its workforce, this on the back of the stock plummeting, what's your reaction?
My reaction is that we're in a contraction phase. There are other firms who are hiring. There's a lot going on in the market that's adjacent to crypto as well. And I think what we're seeing is a pivot towards core principles and ideologies. Building a brand new financial and technology ecosystem is not easy. It takes stamina. And I think if I were new to this industry, I would be nervous. But over the 6 and 7 years I've been here, I've seen a bunch of these cycles come and go. And so I think that what we're just seeing is, again, a refocusing on strategic priorities. And my hope is that we're going to come out of this the way we have before.
You know, you had mentioned real people losing real money, and I want to steal your former lawyer hat for a second. I mean, how does the SEC look at something like this and want to protect investors after so much money has already been lost?
Well, frankly, that's a source of frustration, I think, for the industry, is that we really have been looking to agencies. The industry has been calling for this for quite some time, to say we do need the ability to distinguish some of the scams that do exist in this space from the very legitimate projects that also exist. And instead, what we're seeing is intense litigation, enforcement actions against legitimate actors for relatively minor kinds of infractions, rather than some sort of clarity, which is what the industry really needs. So I have to say, wearing a lawyer hat, I'm not super thrilled about what the engagement that we're getting from the agencies that are here to really support and help all of us.
I mean, even that lack of clarity, how much of a hangover does that give the ecosystem when you don't know what you can build? How do you then invest in projects when you don't know what's possible?
Well, I think that's exactly right. And what we're kind of seeing a response to right now is where there is this high degree of uncertainty around what is going to eventually be kosher, to have built and to have engagement with. People aren't sure what to do. And we've been asking for many years for guardrails, for guidelines on how to engage. We want to work collaboratively with regulation and with policymakers. And in some cases, that's happening. We are seeing a lot of support from the legislative side of the House. We are seeing an approach. Senators Gillibrand and Lummis had their recent bill that kind of is trying to clarify CFTC, SEC jurisdiction. A lot of engagement abroad from the Europeans, from APAC countries, seeing this. But here, the SEC maybe not taking quite the same approach.
I'm sure there's lawmakers who are looking at what's happened with Terra and looking at what's happened with Celsius and are like, I don't know about any of this anymore. I mean, these are companies that and structures that seem to be very legitimate, but are having major issues. What do you say to reassure them?
Well, I think it's actually not that hard to differentiate some of these things from other things, right? There's a reason Celsius has a particular lending platform they were engaged with. Unclear to me, and maybe to others, maybe others know, whether they are, what kind of insolvency we're seeing here. Is this cash flow insolvency? Is it balance sheet insolvency? But I think there's a reason that Coinbase, for example, scrapped its lending, right? And kind of said it's not the right time. We don't have regulatory clarity that we need to see around some of that engagement. As far as Terra, it's a pretty highly differentiated algorithmic stablecoin. It does not reflect the broader crypto ecosystem in any kind of meaningful way. So I do think the thing to note is that education is really important here. Crypto is not a monolith. Every crypto L1, Layer 1 platform has a very different approach to what it's thinking about doing. Every stablecoin is different. The reserves are held differently. And all of that nuance is critically important for us to understand as we move towards more regulation and policy environment.
So what crypto projects are you most excited about? Where do you see legitimate high potential?
So I'm really excited about the ones that are focusing on real problems, solving real problems for real people. I think it's not a surprise. We've seen crowdfunding of a wartime defense of Ukraine, right, in this environment. We've seen massive amounts of outlays to India during COVID relief. We've seen examples where this institutions were really focusing on real problems. We also know that we've got 1.7 billion people in the world without access to basic financial services. It's a massive gap that legacy institutions have not solved. So projects that are focusing in those places and understand that there's a gigantic market there that needs to get these basic baseline checking account kinds of services. Those are the projects that I personally think you're going to see longevity and stamina, and you're going to see those emerge from this particular moment that we're in stronger than ever.